If you're a parent like me, we've got 5 kids, then this video is for you, particularly if you have high school kids. How do you effectively parent high school kids? So I want to bring up this book, Parenting by Andy and Sandra Stanley, and I wanted to revisit a chapter in this book. I've read the book before. If you've not picked up your copy, I'll put a link in the description below. It's called Parenting, Getting It Right by Andy and Sandra Stanley. There's a particular framework that they share that I think is just super helpful to understand as a parent. And there's a particular one I'm going to zoom in on, which is during those high school years. So chapter 2, we have 4 stages of parenting here on page 24 for those of you that have the book. So the 4 stages of parenting are the discipline years, that's between 0 and 5 years old, the training years, 5 to 12 years old, the coaching years, 12 to 18 years old, and the friendship years, which are 18 and plus. I really want to zoom in on the coaching years, the 12 to 18, which is really the high school years and part of middle school. I've got a daughter who's about to turn 16, and I've got a son who's a freshman in high school. I wanted to revisit this chapter and pull out some of the things that I highlighted when I read it. I'm going to jump into chapter 3. The 4 stages of parenting, the later years. This is by Sandra. The coaching years. So highlighted this section, so I'm going to just go ahead and read this. But if they must grow up, we have a few thoughts about entering this trepidatious coaching stage where our kids hit puberty and start thinking we know nothing at all. We being the parents. In a flash, they move from being our most adoring fans to slinking in the corner of public spaces so they don't die of embarrassment. Transitions are hard. To get where we're all trying to go was sometimes a rocky journey. It's a weird time when there seems to be craving for privacy and independence, a cocktail of hormones, and a newfound insecurity. These all swirl together and deliver a bite when you least expect it. As I think about parenting during this stage, the thing that I'm thinking about is what is after 18? What's coming next? And so I'm thinking about having my kids become young adult, where they're 18 years old, they may be living on their own, they may be going to college, they may be entering the workforce, maybe starting a business. Whatever it is they're doing, they're stepping out. Not that they're going to be completely isolated from anyone and everyone for the rest of their life as soon as they turn 18, but rather that they're going to sort of tip over into being able to do legally what they have the ability and capacity to do or choose to do. My thinking is that if they're going to be in a place where they're practically going to be able to do the things that they want to do, how do I prepare them to be the type of person that can handle that type of responsibility, that can lead in those situations, that can run away when they don't know what to do and they're in a situation they shouldn't be in. But ultimately, how do they navigate that environment of being a young adult when the parents, when me, my wife, are not around to set and enforce boundaries and rules for them? How do we transition from having rules and guidelines to being able to give them the freedom to make mistakes, give them the freedom to make their own choices? And ultimately, as they say, this is the coaching years. At this point, it's how do we help them think through the situations and make the best decisions possible, and also not shield them from the consequences of their bad decisions. So those are the coaching years. There's a few things I want to just pull out here that I highlighted. I'm revisiting this with you for the first time since I read it a couple years ago. The next page, page 44. This is also the season when you do more connecting than correcting. This was a harder transition for me than it was for Andy. Correcting is my jam. Maybe because I like telling people what to do and harbor secret thoughts that if folks would just do what I say, life would be better for everyone. There's a word for this: pride. I've learned this the hard way, that I am, in fact, not always right. That still stings a little. So what does connecting look like? I mean, I think we're clear on what correcting is. We've been doing that for a while. Here are the 3 phrases that wrap some understanding around connecting over correcting. Cultivate constant conversation. Don't bail. Let them fail. Get interested in what interests them. One thing Andy and I discovered in the coaching years was the importance of constant conversations. This isn't the same as talking your kids to death or constantly telling them stuff. It's about actual conversations. Ones where they get to tell you what they think. It's about cultivating an environment where they feel safe to talk to you. Parent after parent thinks they are a safe place for the kids to share their hearts. Yet when the kid does, the parent goes into lecture mode, or worse, talks about their kids' stuff with other people. Safety is blown and the kids stop talking. Sometimes cultivating a conversational environment means simply keeping your mouth shut and listening, or asking relevant questions that show interest. But be trustworthy with the treasures they bestow upon you. So this is a shift that we all have to make, and it's not always an easy or smooth one. But hopefully we're making that shift. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty rocky. So on the next page, she goes on to say, be a student of your kids. Figure out the best approaches based on their unique personalities, temperaments, and quirks. Every kid is different. We want to figure out how to meet them where they are. On the next page, she talks about Shanti Feldhahn, who is another author. She gives some advice in her book for parents only. Don't freak out. Whatever you do, don't freak out in front of your teenager. And their definition of freaking out is any strong emotion, so dial it back. It could be excitement or fear or anger, whatever it is. Dial in your emotions. She goes on to say, it can be a delicate dance, this not freaking out thing, because we want to celebrate our kids. So what's a parent to do? We had a celebrate plate. A dinner plate that had confetti painted all over it and the word celebrate in large colorful letters. It allowed us to be chill and let the plate do the freaking out for us. Instead of going crazy when a good thing happened, we would be appropriately excited based on the varying degrees of excitement each kid liked. And I always tried to remember that celebrate plate at dinner time. So this is just something to keep in mind. When you're dealing with little kids, they love to celebrate and be super emotional and over the top, melodramatic. But as you get to middle school and high school, that becomes embarrassing to them and it can actually alienate them. This plate idea that she talks about was a way for them to celebrate but not take it overboard. So she continues, just remember the fastest way to shut down a teenager is to overreact. Practice that poker face. Calmly ask questions that keep them talking and engaged, but don't freak out. Use a posture that communicates, oh really? Tell me more. You can circle back later for correction or clarification, but in the moment, it's important to keep them talking. She continues on the next page. In regards to letting them fail, this is another one of those scenarios where letting them suffer while the stakes are lower yields a better return. It's better to learn lessons in smaller contexts than it is to learn the same lesson when the stakes are much higher and more severe. I can relate to this as a kid, even as a young adult, even as an older adult. It's just a lot easier to learn lessons on smaller scale when there's less at stake, because sometimes the lessons are the same no matter the stakes. Lean into that idea. They learn lessons while the consequences are manageable. They develop skills and build muscle for better decision making later, when the consequences of failure can be life-altering. She continues into a story here. A girlfriend of mine was masterful at this. Her kids went to a private school pretty far from their house. They learned to get all their school stuff, projects, and homework papers gathered and ordered the night before. Why? Because if they left anything behind, mom wasn't delivering forgotten items to school later in the day, even when she really wanted to bail them out. The result, after 1 or 2 times of forgetting, the lesson was learned. Fast forward about 10 years, and these are 3 of the most responsible and resourceful young adults that I know. So we all learn lessons, and if we shield our kids from learning those lessons, they won't learn the lessons, and they'll continue to make that mistake, and then become bigger and bigger. We want to help them learn that lesson at small scale. It may hurt to let them have to suffer, but in the end, as long as we're not letting them drown, as long as it's manageable risk, it can actually help them grow. Let's go to the next page. In my neighborhood growing up, there was a couple who married later in life. Let's call them Steve and Monica. Steve had been married before and had 2 amazing sons who were close to my age and nearing high school. Even though this couple was a bit older, they decided to expand their family. A 3rd son was born, Monica first. We'll call him Trey. To say Monica was overprotective would be an understatement. She constantly coddled Trey and excused every poor behavior with, oh, he's so tired, or, well, that wasn't his fault because... Her coddling followed him into his school years, with Monica being every teacher's worst nightmare. A bad grade? She marched down to the school to explain why Trey deserved a higher score. A fight on the playground? Not his fault. The Anderson kid has always been a problem. Science fair project? No 3rd grader had ever created such a detailed report on the pH levels in local soil. Monica was a helicopter mom before we had a name for it. The older Trey caught, the worse his offenses became. But Monica and Steve never let Trey experience the consequences of his behavior. By high school, they were running interference between him and the law. Then, when he was 21, the offense included selling drugs in a high school parking lot to kids who couldn't even drive yet. That one left a mark. Here's what I learned. Providing a buffer between our kids and the natural consequences they should experience is a gross disservice to them. Don't go rushing to school with every forgotten assignment or lunch. Don't have a conversation with the parent of the kid your kid had a run-in with. Let them start figuring this stuff out. Guide them, encourage them, and even confront them through it. But don't deprive them of their chances to learn from their mistakes. The 3rd contributing factor to connection with our kids is a big one. That's about letting them fail. And I actually want to pull up another book because there's a related insight that I think is helpful. All right, this book is called The Map by Keith Eigel and Carl Kuhnhart. The Map, Your Path to Effectiveness in Leadership, Life, and Legacy. It dives into the concept of constructive development theory, which are about the 5 stages of adult development that every person goes through. And when someone is going into the middle school stage, they're moving into that 2nd level, that self-sovereign stage. And in the years that follow, they start to move into level 3, which is the socialized stage. That's where they start to empathize with their friends. They're not just subject to their desires and needs as they would be in level 2 and level 3. They actually are now considering the values and the identity of the group as a whole and their place in that group. They're looking for belonging. I'm going to dive into a chapter where it talks about a similar idea about the consequences of actions and just from a psychological standpoint, how that plays out. So I want to read a few passages that'll connect to what we've seen over here in this book. So we're going to talk about from level 2 to level 3, who do you trust? So this is stage 2 of a development into stage 3, and what does stage 2 look like, and how do you move someone into stage 3? Here's how Keith starts it. A new word has been making the rounds in recent years. Manalescent. It's just what it sounds like, an adolescent mentality in an adult male body. Women are generally advised to avoid such men in the dating pool, but some can't seem to resist. A related term that has been around a lot longer is the Peter Pan syndrome, named after the J.M. Barrie character, but typifying a concept tracing back to the Roman mythology. Peter Pan didn't want to grow up, and he counted on Wendy Darling to take care of him. Today, many Wendys willingly choose to care for the Peter Pan adult males in their lives, but their initial desire to nurture soon devolves into enabling or codependency. As we consider developmental growth, we need to make clear a distinction between behaviors that are childlike and those that are childish. Childlike behavior can be truly endearing. We try to keep our kid from growing up too fast. We want them to enjoy the innocence of youth and the sense of wonder that comes from blowing a dandelion seeds on the wind or watching a butterfly emerge from its chrysalis. We hope they will carry some of that fascination of discovery with them throughout their life. Peter Pan was childlike. Adults exhibiting level 2 behavior are childish. There's nothing endearing about people in their late 20s or beyond clinging to their me first, my agenda mentality, oblivious to the fact that all their peers have long since seen the world through a different lens. Certainly, we think they will run into circumstances that challenge this level 2 understanding. Most people do and grow into a more effective understanding. But in some cases, they don't change or they refuse to change, and growth arrests. Growth is never easy. At every level, we get comfortable with the way we understand the world. Whenever we let go of one way of seeing things and start to grow, we feel destabilized for a while. We give up the firm footing of what we know and risk something quite different. And it takes time for new perspectives to feel natural. For most people, the challenges that contradict their current understanding create more discomfort than the sense of destabilization, so they are ultimately motivated to grow, which requires tension, which requires us to sometimes allow for that tension or foster that tension, which a lot of times we don't want to stay in that tension. We want to alleviate ourselves of that tension. Sometimes we say it's for our kid, but oftentimes it's really a tension we're trying to alleviate in ourselves. I want to continue here into this next page. He talks, just like Sandra said in this book, about shielding kids from consequences. Parents, one sure way to postpone the growth of your teenagers or young adults is to protect them from reaping the consequences of their me-first behavior. If you allow them to fail a test because I didn't feel like studying, you've created a growth opportunity. If you stand firm and ground them from major events after they break curfew because I didn't realize it was so late, they are likely to be more aware of the hour next time. In both cases, potential loss that can fuel growth may be realized. Again, those are the tension points, and we have to lean into them so that we can foster those opportunities for growth for our kids in the state that they're in now, before the risks and the stakes get higher as they are an older adult. Keith continues and gives more examples that relate to what Sandra shared. My kids have all attended preparatory school with fairly affluent families, and it's astounding to hear stories of parents who actually resist or remove consequences for their kids that the school is rightfully trying to enforce. In many instances, the parents of a little hellion have marched into the principal's office to have a punishment lessened or retracted. As my children's classmates grew into teenagers, it was easy to see whose parents inappropriately withheld or removed consequences, because by high school, many me-first, what-I-want behaviors tend to become public and potentially dangerous. Those kids haven't realized they are part of a larger fabric of family, community, and society, aspects of an increasingly level 3 understanding. And these kids are training their parents to help them get what they want, and their parents are going along with it. And it's unfortunate this happens, and it happens to all of us parents, so don't feel bad if it's happening to you, or if it has happened to you, or if it will happen to you. Know about it and push back against it. And this happens in other contexts. It can happen at a job, it happens in our politics, and we have a choice. Do we let it happen? Do we continue to play a part in enabling it? Or do we stand up and embrace responsibility? So on the next page, he talks about, if young adult children continue to make sense of the world at level 2, it becomes impractical and inappropriate to ground or spank them. Sometimes reasoning or being more vocal in our disapproval can work, but more often we need to stand back and do nothing as they suffer the consequences of their level 2 behavior. Refusing a request to provide something they want and not bailing them out of tough circumstances sometimes even jail. The parental willpower required to make this difficult choice and the commensurate heartache that accompanies it dramatically increased when the parents are at level 3, because from that level our kids' performance still defines us, at least in part from the outside in. So if you're a person that's highly influenced by your kids' approval, you need to start moving towards level 4. You need to start becoming self-authored, define the type of person you're going to be, the vision, the values, and leaning into them even when it means you have to be the bad guy to your kids, or you have to lose, you have to choose to lose at times so that you can win the bigger game. This is one little tidbit for those that are on the younger side of the 12 to 18 range that are in that level 2. When trying to help level 2 adults grow in the workplace, we need to be more concrete than we may believe is necessary. Ambiguity only confuses them. Concepts, theories, intangibles aren't yet real for level 2 people. So appealing to their sense of vision, mission, and impact is too abstract for their level of understanding. As you mentor level 2 leaders, clearly identify the rules of the growth game and the consequences for not playing. Create wins for growing and losses for maintaining the status quo. I'll give you one last little story from Carl Kuhnert, the co-author of this book, in the end of this chapter that I think just helps illustrate just the challenge that this can be as we navigate as a parent. This past year, my teenage daughter signed up to volunteer at a local food bank on Saturday. 2 days before the event, her tennis coach asked her to play a match that Saturday morning. My daughter asked me, "What should I do?" I had a good idea what she should do, but I told her it's your decision. Think about it and do what you think is best. I'll support you either way. Her immediate response was what you would expect from a 15-year-old. But Dad, that's not fair. Later that evening, she came back and said, someone's going to be let down. I want to play tennis, but I committed to the food bank first. I was pleased she chose working at the food bank, and she was right about someone feeling let down by her choice. I am sure the tennis coach and the team were less than pleased with her decision. She didn't enjoy making that hard choice, but it was her decision to make. I could have told her what to do, but I would have robbed her of the opportunity to struggle and think through her decision. And it's just one of those things where as a parent, you could just tell your kid what to do and you would alleviate that tension for them, which would alleviate the tension you feel inside of yourself. But that tension is actually our opportunity to grow. It's our opportunity for the kids to grow. I wanted to just pop a few tidbits from the map. That was the last of what I highlighted in that chapter. The coaching years. How can you help coach your children to become the adults that they need to become and help them work through those issues without giving them all the answers? And then I shared some tidbits from the map, so you can check that out. I'll put links to both of these books in the description below. And I hope this has been helpful for you. It's been a refresher for me as I think about how I can more effectively parent my older 2 kiddos. We've got 5 kids. I will be learning a lot in these next few years with the older ones, and hopefully I'll get some things right. Learn the natural consequences from my failures as a parent that I can apply towards the next kid. If you have any thoughts, any questions, ideas, share your thoughts in the comments below. I'm Jason Scott Montoya, and I'll see you on the next video.
Are you a small business owner? Have you hit a glass ceiling where year over year, you cannot rise above a certain revenue level? Check out Jason Scott Montoya's book, The Jump, to discover how to level up your leadership and pivot your entrepreneurial passion to the highest level.